Welcome to another episode of Ozfish. Dave here, let's get some. This is just a very short episode in relation to how I preserve beach worms that I've been catching using a saltwater brine solution. And here's another little tip for you. You can take freshly caught beach worms, bring some salt water home from the beach, and then put them into a container and put them actually into the fridge. The water will cool down and you can actually keep beach worms in the fridge like that for about 3 to 4 days, and they will stay in really good condition. The worms will die, of course, but what they will do is they'll stay really nice and really usable for about a 3 to 4 day period. So it's another useful little tip. Okay, so here's everything that I need to brine the worms that I caught yesterday. So I had a quick worming session yesterday afternoon, and the worming conditions were pretty tough. There was a fairly big sea running, so a fair bit of surge up and down the beach, but I persevered and caught some worms. And all I have is, in the bottle, is some salt water that I brought home from the beach, some sacks of cooking salt, some paper towel, some sand that I brought home from the beach. Okay, I have beach worms that I caught yesterday afternoon, and they're in salt water that I took from the beach, and they've been left in the fridge overnight. Normally what I do is when I'm worming, I just come straight home from the beach with the worms, and I'd get straight into the brining and just get it out of the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the worms I'm just going to take the worms out. You can see how there's a little bit of blood in the water, and when you're using pliers to catch worms, of course when you're grabbing them, it'll knock them around a little bit and they'll bleed a little bit. Just going to pour some salt water in. That I've brought home from the beach in a bottle. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some sacks of cooking salt. I'm going to tip a little bit in to the salt water. I'm basically just going to stir it around with my hand. Just going to get a little bit more salt. Stir it around my hand a little bit. And just a little bit more, usually about 3 lots I put in. It's not a huge amount of salt, but a liberal amount. And you'll see how your salt water starts to go a little bit cloudy, which generally is a good indicator that the concentration of salt has built up a fair bit in the salt water. And once it's nice and cloudy, and if you keep rubbing it around, the water will go really milky, and that cooking salt has blended into the salt water. I'm just going to give it a tiny bit more. And I'm simply just going to put the worms into that solution. And I'm just going to take a bit of plastic that I've cut out the same shape as the container. And I just use 3 sinkers, and I'm just going to weight those worms down, because I don't want the worms kind of floating. I just want them sitting in that solution. If I'm worming and I've caught a mix of large worms, like really large worms, and smaller worms, I'll leave the smaller worms in for about half an hour and the larger worms in for an hour, and then I'll take them out of the saltwater solution. But these are fairly even size worms, so I'm going to leave them in for 1 hour exactly. And it's as simple as that. All right, so I've had the worms in our saltwater brine solution for an hour, and I'm just going to take them out. So I'm just going to drip dry them and spread them out on some paper towel. Now with this saltwater brine solution that you've made up, if you're doing a lot of worming, what you can do is, you can just take this and just keep it in a cool place and put it aside, and you'll be able to brine down your worms 3 times in the same saltwater solution. So it's really cool. So sometimes I'll be worming really hard and building up my worm supply. I might worm 3 days a week. So I'll just keep this solution, put it aside in a cool place, and I can use it 3 times to do the worms. So that's really handy. I'm just going to give those worms a little bit of a pat dry. So just gently pat them dry. So there's not a heap of worms there, but if I was going to go whiting fishing, particularly if I was using very small number 2 circle hooks, that's more than enough worms there for an awesome sort of whiting session. Absolutely beats going to the shop and actually having to pay for worms. It's a very, very expensive thing to do. Worms are an absolute dynamite bait on the beach, for jewfish, for bream, for whiting, all different sorts of species. Everything sort of loves a beach worm. And what I do for the last stage is I just place each individual worm in some sand I brought home from the beach. And what I do is I just very gently just rub some of the sand off it. Just be quite gentle with your worm. So that worm, it will come out of the freezer like really, really pristine and looks really, really good on the beach. The salt brine has firmed them up just enough, and the fish absolutely love them. And I've caught so many fish using this particular method. I think it's definitely an advantage when you remove all the slime from the worms. I think they just save and preserve a lot better. So basically, that's it. I'll just place them into a plastic resealable bag, lay them out, and flatten them out. So I'll continue on with all of these worms, and I'll just place them into sand, remove the slime, place them into a plastic resealable bag, and put them in the freezer. They will last in the freezer for months and months and months and months and months. And you can really just build up your supply of worms in the freezer, ready to go fishing. So anyway, it's a little bit of a It's a little bit of a mission to brine your worms and to put them into sand and to remove the slime. But believe me, you know, it's a dynamite bait on the beach and absolutely beats going to the tackle shop and purchasing worms. There's our finished product, placed into a plastic resealable bag, laid out. Awesome amount of worms for a really long whiting session on the beach. And I just roll them up gently. And I just place them in the freezer. If you want to see how effective brine beach worms are, flick back through my YouTube channel, my last beach fishing video, and you'll see me catching multiple species on the beach like bream and really big whiting, jewfish, salmon. So they're fantastic. I've only been beach worming for the last 3 months, taught myself how to do it. I use pliers, but it's a fantastic thing to do. It takes a fair bit of effort and time to teach yourself how to do it and to practice it over and over and over. But it's really fun, you know, you're on the beach, you're in the outdoors, and catching the beach worms is sometimes just as much fun as going fishing. So if you've never been beach worming before, you know, go out, give it a go, see how you go, put some time in. I'm sure you'll master it. If you like what I'm doing, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and by all means, share my video around with your friends. Until next time, Dave from Ozfish. Let's get some.